The rain started before sunset, soft at first, then steady and cold. Daniel Mercer had just finished his shift at the water filters outside Colony Ridge when he saw something lying near the edge of the scrub field. At first, he thought it was debris blown in from the last sandstorm. Then lightning flashed across the sky. The shape moved. Daniel froze. The colony had rules. If you saw something unusual outside the perimeter, you reported it. You did not approach, not with tensions rising in orbit, not with the Empire watching every human settlement like a hawk. Another flash of lightning. It was a person, small, curled on her side. Daniel ran toward her before he could think twice. She was not human. Her skin held a faint silver-blue glow under the rain. Her dark hair, heavy with water, clung to her face. The fabric she wore was unlike anything in the colony. Smooth, layered, stitched with fine lines of gold thread that shimmered even in the storm. Symbols were woven into the collar. Symbols Daniel had only seen on news feeds. Imperial symbols. His breath caught. The Empire did not send common citizens this far out. If one of them was here, it meant trouble. She was unconscious. A thin line of blood traced from her temple. Her breathing was shallow. Daniel pressed his hand near her mouth. Still alive, his comm unit buzzed in his pocket. Colony alert tones. He already knew what the message would say. Imperial convoy attacked. High value individual missing. All colonists ordered to remain indoors. Report sightings immediately. Do not engage. He stared at the girl. High value individual. Rain soaked through his jacket. The wind picked up. He could leave her. Call it in. Let the authorities handle it. He imagined armored officials arriving. Questions. Cold voices. She would be taken away, whether she was awake or not. She looked young. Too young to be left in the rain. Daniel slipped his arms under her shoulders and knees. She was lighter than he expected. You're not dying out here, he muttered. He carried her toward his small home at the edge of the settlement. Lights flicked on in nearby houses as he passed. Curtains shifted. People were watching. His neighbor, old Harris, stepped onto his porch. Daniel, what are you doing? Harris shouted over the rain. She's hurt. That's not our business. You heard the alert. Daniel did not slow down. She's still breathing, he said simply. Harris stared at the imperial patterns on the girl's clothes. His face went pale. You bring that trouble into your house. You bring the Empire with it. Daniel did not answer. He pushed open his door and stepped inside. The house was small. One main room, a bedroom, and a kitchen that smelled faintly of metal and soap. He laid the girl gently on his couch. Rainwater pooled on the floor beneath her. Daniel grabbed a towel and dried her face first. Up close, he could see the fine details of her clothing. The fabric was not torn easily. It had been cut clean as if by a precise weapon, not an accident. He cleaned the blood from her temple. The wound was not deep. He wrapped it carefully with gauze from his basic medical kit. He checked her pulse again. Still steady. Her hands were soft, unscarred. Not a soldier. He hesitated before touching the strange clasp at her collar. It was shaped like a star, set with a pale crystal in the center. It pulsed faintly with light. Daniel swallowed. This was no ordinary citizen. He moved to the kitchen and warmed water. He brought a small cup back and knelt beside her. Her eyes opened. They were not silver like her skin. They were deep violet, sharp and clear despite the pain. She flinched, trying to pull away. It's okay, Daniel said quickly. You're safe. She studied him, not with fear alone, but with careful thought. You are human, she said slowly. Her voice was soft but steady. Yes. She looked around the room. Simple walls. Old furniture. No guards. No weapons. You brought me here? You were in the rain. For a moment, she said nothing. You should not have done that, she whispered. Probably not. A faint sound came from outside. Distant thunder, but not from the sky. She heard it too. Her eyes shifted toward the ceiling. Daniel stepped toward the small window and pulled the curtain aside. The clouds were parting. Above the colony, lights pierced through the storm. Large shadows moved across the sky. Sleek shapes, silent and controlled. Imperial ships. More than one. Search beams swept across the land like white fingers. The girl pushed herself up slightly, wincing. They will look everywhere, she said quietly. Daniel lowered the curtain. He felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest. Then I guess we'll need to be quiet, he said. She watched him closely, as if trying to understand him. Why? She asked. Why help me? Daniel looked at the small bandage on her head, at the way she tried to sit straight, despite the pain. Because you were alone, he answered. The house trembled slightly as one of the ships shifted position overhead. The searchlights grew brighter. The rain stopped completely. The sky now belonged to the Empire. Daniel turned off his interior lights. He thought he had brought home a refugee. The stars above knew better. Morning did not come quietly. It came with sirens. Daniel woke to the sound of colony alert tones echoing through the streets. Not the usual weather warning. Not a supply delay. This was sharper. Urgent. He stepped into the main room. The girl was awake, sitting upright now. She had folded the blanket neatly around her shoulders. She looked calmer than before. You should turn on the news, she said. Her voice was steady. Daniel hesitated, then activated the wall screen. The broadcast signal flickered. The image shifted to a massive alien vessel hovering above a starfield. Its hull shone like polished silver. Symbols glowed across its surface. A translator voice filled the room. Imperial Royal Convoy attacked in transit. One vessel destroyed. Survivors accounted for. One individual remains unlocated. The screen changed. An image appeared. It was her. The same violet eyes. The same dark hair. But in the image, she wore ceremonial robes and a crown-like band rested on her brow. Her Highness, the sole heir of the Celestial Empire, remains missing. Daniel felt his stomach drop. He looked at her slowly. You're not just important, he said. No, she replied softly. I am the only successor. The news continued. The Empire demands full cooperation from all nearby human settlements. Failure to comply will be considered obstruction of Imperial authority. Daniel muted the screen. Outside, a low hum passed overhead. Scout ships. They moved slower than the large vessels, sweeping the colony with thin beams of light. They will scan for my life signal, she said. You have a tracker? Daniel asked. She touched the star-shaped clasp at her collar. It was damaged in the attack. It only sends weak pulses now. That is why they have not found me yet. Daniel paced a small room. You said your convoy was attacked. Yes. By humans? Her expression hardened slightly. No, by my own people. He stopped walking. She looked at the floor for a moment before continuing. There are those within the Imperial Council who believe my ideas are dangerous. You're a child, Daniel said. I am not as young as I appear, she answered calmly. My species ages differently. I am old enough to inherit the throne. He studied her more carefully now. There was intelligence in her eyes. Not fear, not confusion. Calculation. What ideas, he asked. I believe weaker systems should not be exploited for resources, she said. I believe other species should be treated as partners, not subjects. Daniel let out a short breath. That doesn't sound dangerous. In my empire, she said quietly, it is. A sharp knock echoed to the colony loudspeakers. Attention, human settlement. The translated voice boomed from above. This is Imperial Search Command. We are conducting a lawful retrieval operation. All residents remain indoors. Do not conceal Imperial property. Daniel looked toward his door. Property. The girl's jaw tightened slightly, but she said nothing. Another announcement followed, this time from the colony governor. All citizens are ordered to report any information related to the missing Imperial heir. Non-compliance may result in severe diplomatic consequences. Daniel's comm unit vibrated again. Messages from neighbors. They know she's here. Scouts saw you last night. You need to report this. He set the device face down. The girl watched him. You should surrender me, she said quietly. He looked up. It would protect your people. And send you back to the ones who try to kill you, he asked. She did not answer. Outside, Search beams swept closer to his home. Light passed across the walls like slow-moving shadows. "I was not meant to survive," she said after a moment. "The attack was precise. My guards were separated. My transport disabled. Someone gave the route details." Daniel sat across from her. "You trusted them," he said. "Yes." Silence filled the room. Another scout ship passed overhead, lower this time. The house trembled slightly. "They will land soon," she said. Daniel stared at the muted screen, at the image of her wearing the imperial crest. "You could have left me outside," she said. "Many would have." He gave a small shrug. "You were bleeding in the rain." Her expression softened for the first time. "My tutors said humans were unpredictable," she said. "That's polite," Daniel replied. "They also said humans are dangerous." He raised an eyebrow. "You are," she added, "but not in the way they feared." A new sound cut through the air. Engines descending. Heavy, not scouts this time. Imperial retrieval ships. The colony loudspeakers activated again. "Human citizen Daniel Mercer." The translated voice called clearly. "Our scans indicate irregular life readings within your dwelling. You are ordered to present yourself and surrender the Imperial heir immediately." Daniel's chest tightened. They knew. Outside, footsteps moved across wet ground. Not running. Controlled. Armored. The girl stood. "You must decide now," she said. He looked at the door. He imagined opening it. Imperial officers stepping inside. Taking her without force, perhaps, or with it. He imagined the Empire remembering which colony cooperated. And he imagined her being returned to the same council that had betrayed her. The knocking came next. 3 firm strikes. "Open the door," the voice commanded. The girl did not look afraid. She looked prepared. Daniel stepped toward the door. His hand hovered near the control panel. The knocking came again. Harder. The Imperial fleet waited in the sky. When the Imperial fleet demanded her return, he didn't open the door. The knocking did not stop. It grew louder. Not angry. Not rushed. Just steady. Confident. Daniel stood in front of the door, breathing slowly. The girl stood a few steps behind him, her back straight, her chin lifted. "Outside," a voice spoke again. "Daniel Mercer. You are obstructing an Imperial recovery. Open the door." Daniel pressed the wall switch and activated the external camera instead. The screen beside the door lit up. 3 figures stood outside a small house. Tall, clad in polished silver armor. Their cloaks carried the same symbols stitched into the girl's clothing. Behind them, more troops waited in silent formation. One of the armored figures stepped forward. The armor's faceplate shifted open, revealing sharp features and calm, cold eyes. "I am Commander Vaylor of the Imperial Guard," he said. "You are harboring the heir of the Celestial Empire. Return her now." Daniel did not open the door. "She's not an object to return," Daniel replied through the speaker. A flicker of irritation crossed the commander's face. "You misunderstand your position, human." "I understand it fine." Behind Daniel, the girl stepped closer. "Let me speak," she said quietly. Daniel glanced back at her. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He hesitated only a moment, then unlocked the door. The wind carried dust across the yard as it slid open. The Imperial soldiers stiffened when they saw her. The commander dropped to one knee instantly. The soldiers followed. "Your Highness," he said, "we have come to retrieve you." The girl did not move toward them. Instead, she stepped beside Daniel. "I was not aware I was lost property," she said calmly. The commander lowered his gaze. "You were attacked. We are securing you." "You failed to secure me before," she replied. A slight tension passed through the soldiers. Commander Vaylor stood slowly. "It was a tragic betrayal. Those responsible will be punished." "Will they?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. The air felt heavier. Daniel stood quietly, hands at his sides. He did not bow. The commander noticed. "You stand in the presence of your superior," Vaylor said. Daniel shrugged lightly. She was standing in the rain last night. The soldiers shifted uncomfortably. The girl looked at Daniel for a brief second. something like gratitude in her eyes. Vaylor turned to her again. Your Highness, please. The fleet is prepared to escort you safely back to the capital. I will return, she said, but not under these terms. The commander frowned. Terms. She nodded toward Daniel. He is my protector. The soldiers exchanged glances. Your Highness, Vaylor said carefully, humans are not. Do not finish that sentence, she interrupted. Silence fell. Daniel could hear distant engines overhead. Vaylor spoke slowly. Royal heirs do not form attachments to lesser species. It complicates diplomacy. Daniel let out a small breath. I'm still standing right here. The girl's voice remained calm, but firm. He carried me from the rain when no one else would. He treated my injuries. He expected nothing. Vaylor's jaw tightened. We would have found you. You had not, she said. A small hovering drone floated near the commander's shoulder, recording the exchange. It was standard for official retrievals. Daniel noticed it too late. Vaylor spoke again. Human, you have interfered in imperial affairs. Daniel met his gaze evenly. I helped someone who was hurt. She is the heir to the most powerful empire in this quadrant. And... Vaylor blinked. And that matters. Daniel looked at the girl, then back at the commander. She's not property, he said simply. She's a person. The words were plain. No anger. No fear. Just truth. The drone hummed quietly, transmitting everything back to the fleet. Vaylor stiffened slightly as a message flashed inside his visor. Across orbit, the exchange was being broadcast a command. Across the Empire, systems tuned in automatically to any signal involving the missing heir. Citizens saw their future ruler standing beside a human in a small settlement house. They saw her choose to stand next to him. Vaylor tried to regain control of the moment. Your Highness, he said carefully, you must return. The council awaits. I will return, she repeated, and he will not be punished for aiding me. The commander hesitated. He will be treated as an honored guest, she added. Vaylor's eyes flicked toward Daniel. A human, he said slowly, inside the imperial capital? Yes. That is unprecedented. So was abandoning me in a convoy, she replied. Another silence. The drone continued broadcasting. In distant cities, citizens whispered. In council chambers, officials argued. The image was clear. The heir defending a human. Vaylor straightened. As you command, Your Highness. The soldiers stepped back. The tension did not vanish. It shifted. The Empire had come expecting obedience. Instead, they had found something unfamiliar. A ruler who chose gratitude. A human who refused intimidation. The search ships above slowed their scanning patterns. The commander bowed once more. Prepare for departure, he said. But his voice no longer carried certainty. Behind the polished armor, doubt had begun. For the first time in centuries, the Empire hesitated. The Imperial transport ship did not look like a rescue vessel. It looked like a throne room wrapped in steel. Daniel stood at the edge of the landing platform outside his home as the ramp lowered. Soldiers lined both sides. Their armor reflected the sunlight like mirrors. The girl stood beside him, no longer wrapped in a blanket. Imperial attendants had brought formal garments. Silver fabric flowed around her like liquid light. The star-shaped clasp at her collar now shone fully, repaired and bright. She looked different, not distant, stronger. Commander Vaylor stood a few steps behind her. His posture was respectful, but tense. Before we depart, he said, the council requests formal confirmation of your identity for the record. The girl stepped forward. The air grew still. I am Lyra Valen Ethres, she said clearly, sole heir to the Celestial Empire. Her voice carried beyond the landing field. Drones hovered silently, broadcasting live across Imperial systems. In the attack 3 cycles ago, she continued, my escort was deliberately separated from my vessel. Route data was altered. Defensive systems were disabled. A ripple passed through the watching soldiers. This was not an accident, she said. Far above, in orbit, council chambers filled with quiet arguments. Lyra turned her gaze directly toward one of the hovering drones. I reject any official who claims this was an external act. The betrayal came from within. In the Capitol, several council members shifted uncomfortably as her words reached them. Commander Vaylor bowed his head slightly. Your Highness, such matters are sensitive. So is my life, she replied calmly. Daniel stood quietly to the side. He did not fully understand imperial politics, but he understood something simple. She was not afraid. Lyra stepped back toward him. This human, she said, placing a hand lightly on his sleeve, found me injured beyond his settlement borders. The soldiers watched closely. He knew my species, she continued. He knew the political tension. He knew involvement could bring consequences. She looked at Daniel briefly before facing the drones again. He carried me from the rain anyway. Daniel felt every eye turned toward him. He asked for nothing, Lyra said. He did not seek reward. He did not seek favor. He did not even know who I was. Across the Empire, citizens watched in silence. Humans were often described in reports as ambitious, unpredictable, power-seeking. This one had acted without knowing. He was helping the future ruler of their civilization. He treated me, Lyra said, not as property, not as leverage, as a person. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. In the capital, divisions sharpened. Traditionalists whispered that she was compromising imperial dignity. Reformists leaned forward, listening carefully. Lyra's voice grew steadier. If I return to the capital, she said, I will return as heir, but I will not return unchanged. Commander Vaylor's eyes narrowed slightly. Your Highness, the Empire has ruled through dominance, she said, through control, through fear of its strength. She paused. I survived because of kindness. The sentence echoed further than any threat could. Daniel shifted slightly, uncomfortable with the attention. Lyra continued. If I inherit the throne, I will rule differently. Cooperation over conquest. Alliance over subjugation. A low murmur spread among the soldiers. Some stiffened. Others relaxed. This human will not be rewarded with titles, she added. Daniel blinked in surprise. He does not want them, she said. She looked at him. Do you? He shook his head immediately. I just want to go back to fixing water filters. A faint smile touched her face. Then he will return to his life, she said. Freely, unharmed, without debt. In the Capitol chamber, one senior counselor spoke sharply. His voice transmitted across the feed. Your Highness, generosity toward lesser civilizations must be calculated. Humans are rising in influence. They will expect. They expected nothing, Lyra interrupted. Silence followed. That was the part no one in the Empire could easily understand. Power was always traded, always negotiated. But this human had not known her identity. He had not calculated gain. He had acted because someone was hurt. The idea unsettled many of them. Commander Vaylor stepped forward carefully. Your Highness, the Council awaits your formal return. Lyra nodded once. She turned toward Daniel. I cannot promise the Empire will change quickly, she said quietly so only he could hear. But I can promise it will remember this. Daniel gave a small shrug. Just try not to stand in the rain again. For a moment, she laughed softly. Then she faced the soldiers. Prepare for departure, she ordered. This time, her voice carried authority without effort. The soldiers obeyed instantly. As she walked toward the ramp, the imperial broadcast continued. Billions watched their future empress choose public gratitude over silent tradition. Lines were being drawn inside council chambers, not with weapons, with ideas. Lyra paused at the top of the ramp and looked back at the colony one last time. Strength, she said softly into the broadcast, is not proven by who kneels. It is proven by who stands without fear. The ramp began to rise. In orbit, debates erupted. Traditionalists demanded caution. Reformists spoke of a new direction. The Empire had ruled for centuries with certainty. Now doubt had entered its highest halls. And it had entered because one human had refused to treat a girl as property. Empires were built on fear. She had just chosen gratitude. Years passed quietly for Daniel Mercer. He returned to his water filters. He repaired pipes. He ignored the rumors that followed his name across the colony. Some people looked at him with pride, others with worry. He did not chase either. Above the stars, the empire changed slowly. Council members were removed. Investigations were completed. Quiet reforms moved through systems that had once relied only on power. Then the invitation arrived. It came in a sealed imperial case, carried by a small diplomatic escort that landed without threat. Daniel opened it at his kitchen table. Inside was a simple message. You once carried me through the rain. Now walk with me into the light. Lyra Valen Ethries. Coronation Day filled the capital world with silver banners and flowing light. Towers stretched into the sky like polished glass. Ships hovered in precise formation above the city. Daniel stood at the edge of the grand ceremonial hall, wearing a formal suit that felt far too expensive for him. He did not belong among generals, ambassadors, and council leaders, but he stood anyway. Trumpets sounded. The chamber doors opened. Lyra entered. She no longer looked like the injured girl from the storm. Her robes shimmered with quiet authority. The imperial crest rested upon her brow, not heavy, but steady. The crowd bowed. Daniel did not out of disrespect, but because she had once stood beside him as an equal. Lyra noticed. A small smile touched her lips before she ascended the platform. The High Chancellor spoke first, listing her titles, her lineage, her right to rule. Then the ceremonial crown was placed upon her head. The chamber fell silent. Lyra stepped forward to address the Empire. My people, she began, her voice calm and clear. For centuries, we have measured strength by expansion, by how far our fleets could travel, by how many systems lowered their banners before ours. Her eyes moved across the vast hall. But strength is not proven by fear. Murmurs rippled gently. She gestured toward the crowd. Years ago, I survived an attempt on my life. Not because of imperial armor, not because of fleets. Her gaze shifted. It found Daniel. Because of a human. All eyes followed. Daniel felt heat rise in his face. He did not know who I was, Lyra continued. He did not calculate advantage. He did not seek reward. She paused. He acted because someone was alone. The chamber listened carefully. That is strength, she said. Across the galaxy. The broadcast carried her words allied and rival systems alike. Today, she continued, my first decree as Empress is this. The Celestial Empire will no longer exploit developing systems for forced resource extraction. A sharp intake of breath spread through parts of the chamber. Instead, we will establish mutual defense treaties and fair trade alliances. Protection will not require surrender of sovereignty. Council members shifted, some uneasy, some proud. Our power will remain, Lyra said firmly, but it will not be used to silence the weak. Beyond the capital, observers from other species leaned closer to their screens. This was new. Lyra's voice softened slightly. Humanity has shown something rare. They act without expectation of control. They offer help without demand of tribute. She looked again toward Daniel. Influence without conquest. The words settled deeply. Human diplomats standing in the hall did not cheer. They did not celebrate loudly. They simply nodded. Over the following cycles, agreements were signed. Trade routes expanded under balanced terms. Joint scientific projects began between imperial and human researchers. The empire did not shrink. It changed. Weaker systems began requesting partnership instead of preparing defenses. Other major powers adjusted their strategies. They had prepared for human expansion through force. Instead, they faced human influence through example. Daniel was offered titles again. He declined them again. He visited the capital only once more, briefly. Lyra met him privately in a quiet garden high above the city. You changed everything, she told him. He shook his head. You did. You gave me the choice, she said. He smiled slightly. You were always going to choose your own path. She studied him for a long moment. You never asked for anything, she said. I fix water filters, he replied. That's complicated enough. She laughed softly. No longer a girl, fully an empress now. When he returned to Colony Ridge, the sky looked the same as it always had, but the stars above no longer felt distant. Across the galaxy, one truth became clear. Humanity had not conquered the most powerful empire in their quadrant. They had not threatened it. They had not overpowered it. They had simply shown it something different, and that difference reshaped history. He carried her home thinking he was saving one life. He had unknowingly changed an empire,